Making headlines for this week of August 14th. Currency war. Has the final war now begun? Exposing Israel and Canada. Leaders of both countries facing increasing international backlash. Weekend at Bernie's. Rallies shatter all records as presidential hopeful continues to surprise. And fashion on the fly. Upstart company revolutionizes fashion industry with 3D printing technology.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. It is unlikely that there are many people who remain with the opinion that the global economy is getting better unless they are lying just to convince people to continue buying into this charade because they stand to lose or think they will lose a significant amount of money. Financial events are heating up as we head into a period where various sources seem to feel that very significant events are to happen on various levels during the last part of August, September, and perhaps October. The rattling has begun and is perhaps more noticeable this week. Reports have offered two reflections on recent events initiated by China this week. An article on the Market Watch website on August 10th reported that China has re-pegged its currency, while other sites use the term devaluation. What seems to be happening, however, is some kind of currency war, and the question of why is what has so many people buzzing, because they either only see the old paradigm or they see the new paradigm that is emerging now but do not wish to acknowledge it. According to this article, weak trade data out of China released over the weekend weighed on the currencies of Australia and New Zealand on Monday, but the yuan didn't budge. This is the currency of China. Indeed, the Chinese currency, also known as the renminbi, has been remarkably steady over the past month, despite the huge sell-off in China's stock market and a spate of disappointing economic data. Market strategists, including Simon Derrick, chief currency strategist at BNY Mellon, and Mark Chandler, head currency strategist at Brown Brothers Harriman, said that China's policymakers have effectively re-pegged the yuan. Chinese policymakers have repeatedly shown they prefer stable exchange rates during crises, but exerting such tight control over the currency would seemingly hurt its chances of being included in the composition of the International Monetary Fund's special drawing rights. This SDR is a reserve asset created by the IMF to help central banks smooth over certain liquidity issues. Inclusion in this basket would be an important milestone on the yuan's journey to becoming a genuine reserve currency. The article makes no mention of the new banks coming online to compete with the IMF and World Bank, nor does it mention that BRICS-aligned countries, led by China and Russia, are creating a new ratings agency that allegedly will rate countries by a more equitable standard than is currently practiced by Western ratings agencies. Also not mentioned is the fact that China has allegedly been buying up huge reserves in gold, something also allegedly being done by Russia in preparation for what could become a coup of Western hegemonic control of the world. Heather Stewart, writing for The Guardian on August 12th, quoted city economist Albert Edwards as saying, "Make no mistake, this is the start of something big, something ugly," in his reaction to China's devaluation, which sent shockwaves through global markets and underlined how powerfully Beijing's move may be felt thousands of miles away. Stewart continues, adding that Edwards, of the Banque Société Générale, argues that as well as creating a challenge for China's Asian rivals by making its exports more competitive, a cheaper yuan will send a tidal wave of deflation breaking over the world economy. Central banks in the US and the UK have primed investors for interest rate rises, with the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney pointing to the turn of the year for a move, and Janet Yellen at the Federal Reserve signaling that a tightening could start as soon as September. Another article by Jeff Berwick on the Dollar Vigilante website on August the 11th writes that last month the IMF's Christine Lagarde gave a press conference in Washington, D.C., making September 15th the deadline for the U.S. to agree to give China more power within the International Monetary Fund. Berwick quotes Reuters news service as reporting that the IMFC, which is one of the key governing institutions of the IMF, has decided that if by September 15th this matter is not resolved satisfactorily, then we have to select the interim step that we will take to make sure that there is an element of down payment on the quota increase. Berwick then adds that it's not quite clear what Lagarde intends to do, but the problem is a serious one. The U.S. is obviously reluctant to cede too much control of the IMF to China and other developing countries. If Lagarde pushes too hard, she may significantly degrade relations between the U.S. and China. Not that they need further souring. Against U.S. wishes, China has just devalued the yuan, and the move clobbered markets around the world and especially in the U.S. Reports were that when the damage was tallied after Tuesday's trading, the MSCI All-World Index of global shares had fallen 1%. U.S. exports will no doubt suffer as well. When Russia and Putin began doing energy deals outside of the U.S. dollar and actively moved forward in creating a new banking system to compete with the West, Russia was targeted and demonized and blamed for events in Ukraine and elsewhere. With the recent action by China, it may therefore not come as a surprise that around 2300 hours or 11 p.m. local time on August 12th, China was hit with a massive explosion in the port city of Tianjin. According to an RT article, 2 blasts shook the northeastern Chinese city of Tianjin late on Wednesday. Some 700 people have been injured, 71 critically, and 50 are dead, according to the latest report by Xinhua News Agency. The National Earthquake Bureau said that there were 2 large explosions before midnight, the first equivalent to 3 tons of TNT, and the second equivalent to 21 tons. At this time, RT seems to be going with the official report that the blast had erupted from a shipment of explosives in a key industrial zone in Binhai New Area at about 11:30 p.m. local time. The initial blast triggered a suspected petrol explosion in an adjacent reservoir. There may be suspicions, however, as the article also noted, a team of 214 military specialists with training in handling nuclear and biochemical materials as having appeared on the scene. This may raise questions as to whether this was a targeted attack as a warning to China for its part in trying to transform the geoeconomic paradigm. Another article posted on the Silver Doctor's website on August 13th, prepared by Bill Holter, offers this good summary of how things are linked together. In his article, he mentions first that China was recently rebuffed by the IMF to have the yuan added to the special drawing rights, as mentioned earlier. He notes that this was followed by the shot heard round the world on Tuesday with China's surprise devaluation and 2 following devaluations. Holter speculates that a different kind of war has now broken out. He also offers a little bit of historical context, writing that we are told the world is in recovery from the very bad experience of 2008. Since then, various central banks have monetized debt on a massive scale led by the Federal Reserve of the U.S. Undoubtedly, the greatest export from the U.S. has been dollars themselves and financial products known as derivatives. For the most part, The world spun merrily until last fall when Saudi Arabia decided to increase production and lower prices. This was presumably done at the request of the United States and meant as a tool to injure Russia's energy sector, economy, and financial system. However, Russia did not buckle this time, like the Soviet Union did last time the U.S. played this game. Something is no longer working for this global banking cabal. Russia and China are moving ahead full steam with their new banks and basket of products and services that will go head-to-head with the Western bankers and controllers. Holter continues. The U.S. has been prodding China to strengthen their currency and has gone so far as to call them a currency manipulator. Now we see China doing the exact opposite of the U.S. requests, and world markets have been shaken at a time when liquidity is quite tight. A stronger dollar since last fall has acted as a constant and nagging margin call to the world, which has contributed to the lack of liquidity. Have the Chinese finally said, "Fine, you want to issue a margin call to the world? We will help you issue it. Let's see what happens to your financial system when the margin call fails to be met." And Holter adds, do you see where I'm going? He writes the Chinese are now forcing the dollar higher by devaluing their own currency. They understand the dollar is nothing more than a debt instrument. Are they attacking and intending to destroy the dollar with its own strength? Holter implies that a stronger dollar, which many are falsely believing is a signal of recovery, is a sign that will decrease U.S. exports in a slow or negative economy. What's more is that the strong dollar can, according to Holter, actually undermine itself and even kick off a derivatives chain explosion. The explosion in China, however, the physical explosion, Holter feels was no coincidence either. With Russia and China apparently holding massive gold reserves, they are prepared to weather the storm of a crashing U.S. dollar as debts and derivatives collapse in this fiat currency game of money created out of thin air. It appears that we are now in a period where sources are being revealed for the particular kind of future they are envisioning. If the information focuses primarily on negative terminology such as crash or collapse, the source is most likely looking only at the transformation from a limited 3D perspective. This is neither right nor wrong, but this depends upon each individual as to whether or not there is truth in what the source is sharing. If one is looking to justify a fear-based reality, this is what the source and those who accept this source will see. A source that speaks or writes about a crash but at least offers information about the alternative system that is coming alongside the old system now, is at least helping people to prepare that a transition or transformation is at least underway. So there is understanding of what is happening, but also with the need to focus on no panic, although there may be some degree of discomfort during the process. The two perspectives can no longer be separated. In the past, it may have been possible to speak only about one financial paradigm or about the other, because there were people who were ready to accept what was being reported about both paradigms. Those reporting on a so-called collapse have an ethical and moral obligation to at least offer that there is another system that is being worked on. However, it is a system being promoted by countries that are generally considered a threat to Western hegemony, and the countries linked to a Zionist agenda control. Thus, within their desperation, it may seem more clear now why these interests are attacking any and all who may threaten that hegemony. In other geopolitical news, we shift to Israel and various stories involving this country and a growing resentment within its borders and beyond toward the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu. We start first with a story that appeared on Press TV on July 28th. This article reported that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has pledged to punish a group of Syrian Druze individuals in the occupied Golan Heights who attacked injured ISIL Takfiri militants en route to a hospital in Israel. According to Netanyahu, he said, "We will not allow anyone to take the law into their own hands. We will not allow anyone to disrupt Israeli soldiers on their missions." He called the incident very serious and said those behind it would be located and held to account. From what is being reported here, it seems that Netanyahu has confirmed what many around the world have already suspected, that ISIL is actually sanctioned and staffed with soldiers from Israel, and this may therefore call into question the entire ISIS, or ISIL operation. On August 7th, on his tikkun.org website, Rabbi Michael Lerner reported on some activities that had taken place in Israel, much to his sadness. He wrote on his website that, faced with the horrendous crimes of an ultra-Orthodox Jew stabbing participants in a gay pride demonstration in Israel, and the firebombing of Palestinian homes and the resulting burning to death of an 18-month-old Palestinian baby, while others in the family are in critical condition and may not survive, many Israelis and American Jews denounced these horrendous acts. Netanyahu and his government ordered a few Israeli settlers arrested in administrative detention, the polite word to describe the practice which till now has been used against thousands of Palestinian civilians, arrest without formal charges, often held in detention for months or more without trial, and in the case of Palestinians, often tortured. As many Israeli human rights and peace advocates point out, the firebombing of Palestinian homes is just one of the many variants of violence visited upon Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, the goal being to make life so difficult that Palestinians will eventually be ethnically cleansed, and Israel can make the West Bank a fully Jewish majority part of Israel. Lerner adds, or hastens to add, that most West Bank settlers do not participate in acts of violence, though they overwhelmingly vote for extremist right-wing political parties whose policies are racist and whose goals are not fundamentally dissimilar to those of their violent West Bank settler neighbors. Lerner added that all of this has left us stunned, and he's speaking to his staff at his organization. This has left them stunned, saddened, repenting for these horrific crimes on the part of our people, and all the more determined to insist on the need to end the occupation and create an economically and politically viable Palestinian state, while purging our own people of the hatred and racism that too many Israelis and American Jewish allies have been willing to ignore, apologize for, or deny. It was earlier, on July 16th, that Rabbi Lerner, in an article published on the Salon.com website, wrote that Netanyahu does not speak for us, meaning the honorable Jewish people. In the article, Lerner wrote the following: "We in the liberal and progressive wing of the Jewish world must loudly and publicly congratulate the negotiators who achieved a deal that will prevent Iran from developing the capacity to build nuclear weapons in the coming years, an agreement that also promises an end to economic sanctions. We are glad that adequate inspections and safeguards are a part of this deal. No one would have trusted it otherwise." While Republicans rushed to denounce the deal, their response has been predictable and hollow, given their consistent policy of opposing anything that might give President Obama the appearance of having done something valuable. Their primary claim to credibility comes from identifying with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who immediately decried the agreement as a historical mistake. The right wing of the Jewish world is already organizing to oppose the nuclear deal with the aid of a handful of billionaires who will fund a steady and public barrage of opposition. That is why it is important for Jewish liberals and progressives to speak as Jews to counter the right-wing assault. The fact that agents acting on behalf of the government of Israel have been exposed as having burned a Palestinian baby has pushed the Israeli government into full damage control. An article appearing on the Al Jazeera website on August 2nd reported that Israel was forced to act quickly in the face of this revelation. The article writes that after a year of total silence, Netanyahu made 2 phone calls to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in as many weeks. The first of the calls was one of protocol regarding the start of the Eid al-Fitr festivities, but the other call, the more important of the 2, was made after Israeli Jewish settlers burned a Palestinian toddler and his family alive. The horrible death of the child and his family seems to have rattled Netanyahu, who responded by calling the killing a terrorist act, which supposedly set it apart from what the UN has documented as 2,100 acts of violence against Palestinians, their religious institutions, their homes, and other Palestinian-owned properties committed by Jewish settlers since 2006. This attack has been defined as terrorism simply because Israel is petrified of the possibility that this incident could open up a Pandora's box of questions regarding the legitimacy of the settlement enterprise and policy in its entirety. By calling this particular act a terrorist act and ignoring the larger crimes of the entire settlement enterprise, the Israelis are hoping to avoid the full force of international law and the downward spiral in international opinion should such a trial bring. This is because Palestine now has membership within the International Criminal Court and has initiated court action to have Israel investigated for crimes against humanity. As a result, there appears to be growing resentment towards Netanyahu. A UK government petition has been started asking for the arrest of Netanyahu when he comes to the UK in September. If the petition reaches 100,000 signatures, the government will be compelled to debate the petition according to rules. The petition will appear in the show summary along with other links, and as of airtime on August 14th, had received over 55,000 signatures. Across the Atlantic Ocean now to Canada, and we find Prime Minister Stephen Harper, a loyal Netanyahu puppet, still reeling in his own troubles as he fights for his political life over the next 2 months. On top of everything else being revealed about him at this time, it was reported on July 28th that documents were now being leaked, tied to spying carried on by Harper through his agents. Aditya Tejas of the International Business Times reported on that day that hackers affiliated with the anonymous group leaked confidential Canadian intelligence documents on Tuesday, revealing, or the Tuesday being the 28th, revealing the country's spying activities abroad. The documents exposed the widespread reach of the surveillance network operated by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, or CSIS. Officially, CSIS only operates 3 foreign stations in Washington, D.C., London, and Paris. But the leaked document, marked as secret, purportedly from the country's Treasury Board, lists a total of 25 foreign stations, many of which are located in developing countries and/or unstable environments. Documents and a video tied to Harper's spying on U.S. President Obama are alleged to be behind the reason why the Keystone Pipeline deal was shot down, because Harper had been exposed. An article appearing on the Canadian Progressive World website by Obert Madondo offers that Anonymous is now privy to many of Harper's most cherished secrets, and this may make the upcoming election even more dangerous for Harper if it is true. Anonymous is threatening to continue to release information on Harper so long as the RCMP, the National Police Force, fails to arrest an officer who shot an anonymous member. The RCMP did not comply, and this was the first leak. Adam Dodek wrote for the Globe and Mail that Harper is playing a very dangerous game with his practices of constitutional disobedience. In his panic to try to keep the election deck of cards stacked in his favor, he has issued a new law declaring that Canadians living abroad are not eligible to vote. This drew a heated letter to an editor from Canadian actor Donald Sutherland, father of actor Kiefer Sutherland. Sutherland describes everything that makes him a proud Canadian, and yet he now cannot vote. He writes that Canada isn't Canada anymore, that the beautiful, peaceful, or peace-pursuing dream that was Canada, the Canada you once knew and were so proud of, is no longer Canada. The article goes on in detail just who we've become, and it isn't pretty. It's very sad, and this new Canada, this Canadian government that has taken the true Canada's place, has furiously promoted a law that denies its citizens around the world the right to vote. Why? Is it because they're afraid we'll vote to return to a government that will once again represent the values that the rest of the world looked up to us for? Maybe. The scandal involving the Senate in Canada, as reported on CVN a few months back, is getting back into high gear with testimony this week from Harper's former Chief of Staff, Nigel Wright, the man who paid Senator Mike Duffy's expenses of over 90,000 Canadian dollars with a check. And it is being revealed that Harper knew about everything, even though he had previously denied it. A CBC News article last May reported that Canada was continuing its steadfast support for Israel in blocking a UN plan to curb nuclear weapons, much to the dismay of the global community. According to this article, Israel has expressed its gratitude to Canada for helping to block a major international plan towards diminishing the world's stockpiles of nuclear weapons. This declaration came as the UN hosted a review conference on the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The document was calling on the UN to hold a disarmament conference in 2016, but this would threaten Israel, as they may have to admit that they are a nuclear power, and at the moment they are the only undeclared nuclear power that has not signed this treaty. As well, Harper is seeking to impose a travel ban, so people cannot travel to countries that he has deemed to be terrorist locations. Perhaps this is because he does not want people finding out that things are not as bad there as he is trying to tell the world they are. The travel ban, however, would not apply to anyone who is traveling there for the purposes of fighting against ISIL terrorists. But wait, hang on. Didn't Netanyahu just say in the previous story that ISIL was Israel? It is a messy drama unfolding in Canada, and the next 6 to 7 weeks could very well bring the revelation of whether or not there are any redeeming and beautiful qualities left in this formerly grand country. Coming from the Middle East this week, in the follow-up to the recent alleged nuclear deal the U.S. signed with Iran on July 14th, Veterans Today has reported on August the 11th the U.S. as having lifted its ban on Iranian oil purchases. According to this article, the U.S. Treasury and State Departments, in a recently published report, have ensured that Tehran's oil customers can continue to purchase Iranian crude during an interim period before the terms of what Iran and 6 world powers agreed on in Vienna can be fully implemented and sanctions lifted. The article adds that European refineries have indicated their readiness to restart purchasing Iranian crude oil once anti-Iran sanctions are terminated. According to Bloomberg, refiners based in Italy, Spain, and Greece have indicated that they are ready to resume purchasing crude oil from Iran when the country returns to oil markets. In a YouTube video that was published on August 13th, U.S. Secretary of State Jim Kerry was recorded making the following comments, suggesting that a failed deal with Iran will spell the end of the US dollar as a global reserve currency.
I went to China. We persuaded China, don't buy more oil. We persuaded India and other countries to step back. Can you imagine trying to sanction them after persuading them to put in place sanctions to bring Iran to the negotiating table? And when they have not only come to the table, but they made a deal, we turn around and nix the deal and then tell them you're going to have to obey our rules on the sanctions anyway. That is a recipe very quickly, my friends, business people here, for the American dollar to cease to be the reserve currency of the world, which is already bubbling out there. If the United States were to behave that way, not only would we have lost them with respect to the sanctions, but we will lose their support if we had to use military action. Do you imagine Israel and the United States taking military action because we forced a situation where Iran goes back to what it was doing because we wouldn't live by the deal that we already agreed to, which the United Nations has already approved 15-0 in the Security Council?
This would also seem to suggest that something else is on the table with regard to these alleged nuclear negotiations. If it is only about nuclear weapons, why would the status of the US dollar as global currency be at risk when it never was before? Although I cannot yet back this up with concrete proof, my instinct is telling me that nuclear negotiations, quote unquote, is merely the story being given to the public. There is something else going on that I am not yet fully able to explain. One possibility, however, may be linked to the fact that Iran is in possession of technology that was successfully able to capture a US drone that was apparently spying on its territory. It may be possible that a story needed to be created to justify all the meetings that may have been going on to address a possible shift in the power roles of the Middle East. There has been some speculation that Iran is in possession of some advanced technologies from the Keshe Foundation, on the condition that the technologies be used for peaceful purposes, and this may explain why negotiations have suddenly become more intense with Iran in recent times. There has to be another explanation for why Israel currently, and the US formerly, were so adamant in wanting to start a war with a country that has not invaded or attacked another country in about 200 years. The US, meanwhile, according to WashingtonsBlog.com, has been at war 222 out of the 239 years since 1776, or roughly about 93% of the time. There is also a possibility that Iran may have historical information concerning the Khazarian Empire, and this may be why the Israeli government is so keen to attack Iran. This information may threaten the existence and justification of the current Israeli Zionist agenda. The success of this quote-unquote negotiation can also be taken in the context of the work President Obama has done with Cuba. There is a thaw in relations taking place that were not seen previously, and wedges are now forming in relations that were formerly airtight, such as the relations the U.S. has had with Israel. These are just a few possibilities to consider. I feel pretty strongly at this time, however, that the official story has little, and maybe even nothing, to do with what is really going on, and more questions need to be asked. In another Middle East-related story, news agency Reuters has reported on August 7th that Iraq received its first sovereign credit rating on that week, which it had sought ahead of a planned $5 billion international bond issue aimed at relieving the pressure of low oil prices on state finances. Ratings agency Fitch assigned Iraq a B- rating with a stable outlook, 6 notches below investment grade, citing political risks and insecurity that are among the highest faced by any sovereign rated by the agency. It also forecast a double-digit fiscal deficit for 2015, owing to lower oil prices, higher military spending, and costs associated with the fight against the Islamic State insurgents in the country's north and west. It is still unclear what the Western interests are attempting to do with Iraq. Iraq is also an extremely wealthy country with vast resources, so this is pretty clear as to why they were originally targeted by Western banking interests. What exactly the role is of this group being called ISIS or ISIL is also unclear at this time, and whether or not the purpose is to destabilize the leadership or to merely prevent the unity of the country to perpetuate more and more profits through war. The media plays up various reports of instability between the Kurds, the Shia Muslims, and the Sunni Muslims, and it may be part of the facade. The media has reported that there is extreme poverty in Africa, and there is truth to this, but there are also cities that are quite advanced, and there are arguments to support why Africa should not be considered a poor continent. It is possible that the same could be said for Iraq, although it is difficult to prove, as information appears to be quite controlled coming out of this country. Just as with Iran, the same could be said with Iraq. There appears to be much more to this story than what is being reported. In general news, many regular CVN listeners are already familiar with the fact that Facebook is a tool being used by certain interests to track and monitor its users despite claims being made to the contrary. Perhaps you may have noticed that when using Facebook, certain ads are showing up on your page and they are linked to your geographical area or perhaps to websites that you have visited. There is also something else going on that I have discovered. When I click on a story that is posted in Facebook and it opens up in a new page, I have observed that with an increasing number of sources, there is coding being added to the link to show that it was taken from Facebook. This is obviously how Facebook, or at least one way, Facebook can track who is sharing what stories. Because this is not a video newscast, it is harder for me to explain this to you, but I will be posting a few examples in the show summary. The pattern seems to involve the use of the question mark or the pound sign, followed by a series of code. In some cases, you may actually see the word Facebook, or perhaps only FB. In one example, sharing a YouTube video added some coding to something I copied from an email link sent to me. The hidden coding did not appear in the email, but when I pasted the link into the browser, the coding appeared for the purposes of tracking. If you are one who is concerned about Facebook tracking and is willing to help do something about it, perhaps try to pay closer attention each time you share the link. If you see that certain coding has been added, usually after a question mark or after a pound sign, consider removing it and then test it, of course, to verify that it works before you share. Most of the time, once you receive or remove, rather, this added code from the link, you will still be able to display the page, but the tracking information will now have been removed. The examples in the show summary will give you an idea of what to look for. As you practice this, you will begin to find other examples as well of where coding has been added. Once it has been removed, one can still get to the story, but as just mentioned, the tracking information will now be gone. Thanks to the social media and internet, a wave of awakening may just be starting to happen within the U.S., and although it has been building up for a little while, a massive push has been received as record-breaking crowds lined up to spend a weekend at Bernie's. For those who are familiar with the Hollywood film of the same name, there is, of course, a very significant difference. The Bernie referred to in this story is far from dead, but very much alive and causing grief for virtually all candidates of both the Democrats and Republicans. A growing slogan is "Feel the Burn," a play on the word burn by replacing with the short form for Bernie. A series of weekend rallies across the west coast of the U.S. have drawn in crowds that no candidate can even touch, and even beats crowds received by Obama in the beginning of his campaign. To be fair, however, things are significantly different this time around. Even back in 2008, social media was nowhere near what it is today. Twitter, Instagram, and other media of communication were either not around or in their infancy. The people only thought they were informed back then, but this time around they are demonstrating that they are actually informed on numerous topics, and this is more threatening to the controlling establishment that is permanently connected to the White House and not to any sitting president. An article on the Ring of Fire website on August 10th reported that over 20,000 people attended a Sanders rally in Portland, Oregon. In this rally, he also unveiled a broad platform to address racial inequality. This in response to protesters allegedly aligned with the Black Lives Matter movement who disrupted a rally of his the previous week. Official spokespeople have denied that the protesters were connected to their movement, and they demanded that the disruptors apologize to Sanders. On August the 11th, Jonathan Easley, reporting for The Hill, noted that the following night, on Monday, Sanders was estimated to have received around 27,000 people in LA, a city that historically has not received candidates this early in an election campaign. Easley estimated that around 28,000 attended the rally in Portland and about 15,000 as attending an earlier rally in Seattle. In a Washington Post article, Ed O'Keefe and John Wagner wrote the following: "The overflow crowds showing up to hear Bernie Sanders these days are a testament not only to his current popularity and the campaign's social media savvy, but also to the promotional abilities of an alchemy of like-minded interests, progressive activists, labor unions, and even Sarah Silverman." The comedian took to Twitter to let her nearly 6.7 million followers know that she would be at a rally for the Democratic presidential hopeful on that Monday. The event, as reported, drew over 27,000 people, about 5 times as large as any crowd that has turned out for any Hillary Clinton event. Sanders, Bernie, has always seemed to be on the right side of history, Silverman told the boisterous audience at the LA Memorial Sports Arena, noting that the 73-year-old was a civil rights activist in the 60s, supported gay rights in the 1980s, and strongly opposed the Iraq War before most other Americans. How is he getting such high turnouts? The article adds that about a week before each Sanders rally, his campaign sets up a web page announcing the location and blasts out an email to supporters in that geographic area, asking them to RSVP. There are no paid advertisements. The events are promoted on Facebook, with the campaign enlisting progressive groups and other friends and allies to help spread the word, said National Field Director Phil Firmont. From there, things tend to take on a life of their own. Yes, there are arguments about the fact that Sanders has an Israeli passport, and some are trying to use this as the only excuse to criticize him. It is important to note that there are many beautiful Israeli Jewish people who are starting to turn against the actions of their government. Just because one has a passport does not necessarily mean that one supports one's government. I have let my Canadian passport expire, but I could still have it, even though I do not support the actions of the Canadian government. I will not renew that passport until a lawful and peace-oriented government has been restored to Canada that is committed to rooting out corruption and creating a better planet for all. Another surprise is on the Republican ticket. What exactly is going on with Donald Trump? Over the last few years, CVN has aired comments Obama has made about Trump at the annual White House Correspondents' Dinners. Suddenly, I am beginning to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there is some kind of agreement going on between Obama and Trump to help make some positive change. Maybe The teasing and the alleged friction between the two is part of a staged act to bring down the Republican Party. If we observe some of the things that Trump is saying, he is coming out to say that vaccines are deadly, and he has exposed the political system as corrupted. An article on the Event Chronicle on August 10th reported some of what Trump said during a 2-minute exchange during the Fox News GOP leaders' debate. The article quoted Trump as saying the following: "Insurance companies are making a fortune because they have control of the politicians," of course with the exception of the politicians on this stage. And in brackets it notes that there was some uneasy laughter to that comment. But Trump continues, "But they have total control of the politicians. They're making a fortune." And he followed up on this by adding, "I will tell you that our system is broken. I gave to many people before this. Before 2 months ago, I was a businessman. I give to everybody. When they call, I give. And you know what? When I need something from them 2 years later, 3 years later, I call them. They are there for me. And that's a broken system." Now, I have not been a fan of Donald Trump, but I am finding myself beginning to wonder if there is another strategy here, perhaps even a brilliant strategy put together by Obama and the Donald, as he is also known by, in an attempt to trump the Republican Party. If only the Green Party leader in Canada, Elizabeth May, could get a grassroots network of support that Sanders has to awaken and charge the upcoming Canadian election this October. Related news now, and I unfortunately am starting my week back from vacation by making a correction. Many did not hear the newscast when it first went to air on August 14th. In that version of the newscast, I had a story about the Smithsonian Institute doing a crowdfunding project to pay for the restoration of the spacesuit worn by Neil Armstrong when he walked on the moon. The story was reported on by Robert Moore of ITV. In his video report, he showed the suit and the boots, which had a tread that was different than the tread of the boot that allegedly appeared on the moon. I had speculated that perhaps this was evidence that the moon landing had been faked. One CVN listener, Mike O'Brien, contacted me on August 15th and provided me with a link to a website showing the outfit worn by astronauts so they can survive the cold of space. In this particular photo, there are included overboots, which are worn outside the craft. It appears that these are the boots that provided the tread that allegedly appeared on the moon. Now, there are many who still feel that the landing was faked, and it is very possible. I'm not going to say one way or the other at this time. It is possible. However, the evidence that I thought I was providing in the newscast does not contribute in a meaningful way to proving this argument. This is why I have removed this story from the newscast. A mistake was made on my part, and I apologize to my listeners for this. The show summary will include the original photos that this newscast that put out on August 14th, including the newer updated photo of the overboots that appeared. So the clarification is there in the summary, and I stand corrected on this particular story, and I thank Mike O'Brien for bringing this to my attention. Many listeners will know the actor Dan Aykroyd. Although the name may not be familiar to some, there will be those who may recognize at least two of the characters he has played in Hollywood films. Dr. Raymond Stantz, one of the three Ghostbusters in the movie by the same title, and also Elwood Blues, the brother to Jake Blues in the 1980 movie The Blues Brothers. Aykroyd was born in Canada's capital city of Ottawa and studied criminology and sociology before getting into acting. Although this is pure speculation, there could be an argument that his educational background may have some impact on his choice to become an advocate for the disclosure of our galactic families to the world. In an article on the AOL.com news website on April 20th, Ishita Singh, prepared the article. Aykroyd told the Huffington Post show hosts that he has seen 4 UFOs and considers himself to be a believer.
I said if I ever meet Dan Aykroyd, I'm going to ask him about this. Do you believe in UFOs?
I do. I've seen 4. And, I can't say that they're alien craft, and neither can the Air Force. The Air Force has been very interested in this. They don't deny the existence of these hyperdynamic, super aerodynamic craft. They don't deny. Their anguish comes in that they can't tell you. They want to tell you everything but that they're extraterrestrial. Any excuse at all, even if they're unknown or unsolved, but the Air Force cannot just come out and admit that there are extraterrestrial beings far in advance of our culture that have built these machines. Bruce Maccabee has a book out right now. It's called The UFO CIA Connection, or the UFO FBI CIA Connection. You can get it on Amazon. Bruce Maccabee is a former consultant for the Department of Surface Naval Warfare, for the division in the Navy there that covers surface naval warfare. He's a physicist. I mean, this is not some flake, and he has gone and taken meticulous research and gotten everything basically over the last, since the 40s, that the Air Force, the CIA, the FBI have written about it, and they're very interested in knowing what's going on, but they, like us, they don't know.
Have they asked you about the 4 you saw?
I didn't discuss with Bruce that, but they were definitely, there was one, 2 specifically were definite aerial constructs of some kind with one of them with a light and one of them dull gray, and they were structures, and one of them going very slow, one of them hovering over me, and then there were the 2 that my wife and friends and I saw high altitude sighting many years ago in Martha's Vineyard, 2 flying side by side. They were about 100,000 feet up, and they were going fast. And I just had my driver the other day. I went to work there, and I had a driver that got the driver to spare the knee and the ankle and the hip. And he said he was in the SAC command, and he was up in Newfoundland, and one night they were in the hole there where the guys would come in, and he was a cook down in there, and he would cook for the SAC crew, so they'd come in and change their shift. And one day they were all gathered around the radar screen, and this thing was going 70,000 miles an hour and doing whip turns like this. So yeah, no, I believe that like Lord the Lord Hill Norton said, that there's probably many species coming and going, and that the Air Force is very interested. They don't deny the existence, but they can't come out and say, because then you're going to go, wait a minute. The parish priest, the cop on the beat, the president, you don't got the power. They've got the power. What with that black shit, the triangle, the delta, look at it, I want to talk to them. And you'd have complete breakdown in society. The Brookings Institution in 1958 said as much. There was a study in that, and they said you can't divulge this. You can't make that this is real. So 50% believe, 50% don't believe. I happen to be a believer because I've witnessed 4 really unexplained crafts. So.
Yeah. It's possible that Aykroyd may be missing a bit of the bigger picture behind disclosure. The Toronto Sun on November 3rd of 2014 reported the following. Actor Dan Aykroyd is convinced alien life forms refuse to make contact with the human race because we are seen as a violent, depraved, disgusting species, quote unquote. Although there is for certain a lot of truth to the fact that humans have not been life-honoring, there is also the larger, more spiritual picture as to why this so-called violent, depraved, and disgusting species needed to experience all that we have experienced in order to grow into a greater galactic maturity. Perhaps Aykroyd does know this, but he is using a certain language to push the buttons of certain parts of the closed-minded sections of our society. Earlier this month, an article appearing on the Mind Unleashed website wrote the following. First, NASA Chief Scientist Ellen Stofan openly admitted that alien life is imminent, and then just last Tuesday, and again this was a month ago, Dr. John Grunsfeld of NASA's Science Mission Directorate announced that the agency was on the verge of discovering life on planets other than Earth. Grunsfeld told a House committee, "Are we alone? Many people on planet Earth want to know. We are on the cusp of being able to answer that question." And Stofan's recent comments were even more bold. She said, "I think we're going to have strong indications of life beyond Earth within a decade. I think we're going to have a definitive evidence within 20 to 30 years. We're on the verge of things that people have wondered about for millennia. Within all our lifetimes, we're going to understand that there is life on other bodies in the solar system. We're going to understand the implications of that for life here on Earth. Stofan and Grunsfeld hide the fact that NASA has been lying to the public about known extraterrestrial life for decades now, and that ETs have likely been visiting Earth for centuries. There is also another key point that this article makes. The article mentions the coverage given by Dr. Michael Salla and David Wilcock to a whistleblower named Corey Goode, who has been sharing information tied to secret space programs and also alleged meetings and interactions with members of our galactic families, some of which he claims took place on the moon. The article makes the following point. When you pontificate the facts, Corey Goode is showing up precisely when the largest space-related military-industrial complex arm is admitting openly that alien life exists after decades of cover-ups and numerous possible murders, or the defaming of military personnel, astronauts, and scientists who have been trying to tell us the same thing for some time now. Whether you believe his wild testimony of secret space programs and bases on the moon or not, the very fact that thousands of people are signing up to see him be interviewed by Wilcock on Gaiam TV is a testament to just how ready people are to be told the truth regarding extraterrestrial life. The word is getting around. The question now is how quickly can this dam be broken so the truth can flood out, as it must now do. Over to tech news now, and we explore a couple of more ways in which the 3D printing revolution is set to radically alter the way we are currently living. We start first with the world of fashion. It was only a matter of time before 3D printing would reach into the clothing and fashion industry. A startup company called Nitan is about to turn the industry upside down, and here to explain all about it is Nitan's CEO, Hal Watts.
In the 1980s, Amancio Ortega Guana, the son of a train mechanic, changed the fashion industry forever. He managed to reduce production lead times from 6 months to just 90 days. And this gave him such an advantage that he was able to build Zara, the world's most profitable fashion brand. Today, with Nitan's technology, we're able to take those 90 days and reduce them to just 90 minutes. Good morning. My name is Hal. I'm the CEO of Nitan, and we are revolutionizing the fashion industry. This is an industrial knitting machine, and machines like these are used to produce over 20% of all the world's clothes. And we're not just talking about your brand's jumper here. These machines make anything, scarves, sportswear, dresses. They can make anything in a material such as acrylic or even cashmere. The problem with these machines is they're incredibly difficult to program. It takes an expert over 2 days to set up the machine to produce a single garment. And this means that batches have to be in the thousands to be cost effective. Our technology effectively turns these machines into 3D printers for clothes, enabling us to produce 100 unique products at exactly the same unit cost as 100 identical ones. This has a massive impact on the industry. Minimum order volumes are reduced from 50 to just 1 piece. Production times, which at their absolute best are 3 weeks, are now reduced to just 90 minutes. And finally, the 10% of clothes which are never sold and go to waste are completely eliminated, because we manufacture everything on demand. Nitan is a vertically integrated fashion brand that takes advantage of this technology to outperform existing brands. With our online design tools, we source designs from all over the world, and we're able to work with more designers and respond to trends faster than anybody else. All our products are made on demand, which means we have no stock whatsoever. In order to do this, we've developed 3 pieces of technology, each of which is patent pending. The first are a set of design tools that enable the designer to create a product and upload it directly to our platform, where they can adjust the colours and visualise it on a model straight away. In fact, this visualisation is so good that we can use it to sell products directly to the consumer. This means that we don't manufacture anything until it's sold, and it allows us to have an infinite range of products without needing stock or a warehouse. Finally, we can take any of these designs and turn them directly and instantly into the code to operate an industrial knitting machine. And we can distribute that code to a machine anywhere in the world. In order to use this technology to its best effect, we're working with 3 core groups of designers. The first are established designers who currently cannot offer customized products or limited editions to their consumers. Secondly, we're working with up-and-coming designers who in the current industry have absolutely no access to production facilities. And finally, we're working with creatives and trendsetters who have huge online followings but are not able to easily offer these people products. Our business model is simple. We connect designers directly to customers. They receive a 20% royalty for every sale, and our costs account for 20%, leaving us with a 60% profit margin. Now, in the current industry, a designer would typically receive 18% of the sale price, and for that, they would have to do all the sourcing and production management. We give designers more time to do what they're really good at, which is designing amazing products. Because we're working with so many designers, it gives us a breadth of product and an offering which customers won't be able to find anywhere else. In order to build this incredible technology, we've had to put together an amazing team. A team that understands not just technology, but the fashion industry as well. Myself and Ben founded a successful innovation consultancy with customers such as Google and Selfridges. Kirsty is a fashion knitwear designer who's worked for luxury houses in London and Paris. And finally, Greg used to be a technical director at EA Games and is a world-leading expert in visualization software. We also have an amazing board of advisors who've been helping us and who are actively involved in the business. Steve has created some of the world's largest brands from scratch. Tracy, the founder of Luster, has an extensive experience in growing e-commerce businesses. And Leila and Eduardo Zenia's family business is the world's largest luxury menswear brand. And they're both incredible entrepreneurs in their own right. Now, we launched our design tools earlier this week, and the demand's been incredible. To put it into context, Zara have the world's largest design team, with over 350 designers. At the current rate that we're acquiring professional designers on our platform, our design team will be larger than Zara's by the end of next month. We're raising $2.3 million, and we already have $2 million committed. My name's Hal, I'm the CEO of Mitten, and we are revolutionizing the fashion industry.
For those who are interested in fashion design or to learn more about the company, a link to the company will be in the show summary for this story. As well, a link to a written story by Steve O'Hear appearing on the TechCrunch website on June 18th will also be in the show summary for those choosing to read the details related to this story. In this next story, we look to Korea, where the focus on shipbuilding is moving into the 3D printing arena. On July 18th, Heidi Milkert, writing for the 3dprint.com website, offered the following. By far, the leading enabler of international trade is the cargo shipping industry, which makes up a staggering 90% of all trade commerce. Without the shipping industry, which generates over $500 billion in annual income via freight rates, it is estimated that half of the world would starve. Leading the way within the shipping industry is a South Korean company called Hyundai Heavy Industries. With over $50 billion in annual revenue, this 43-year-old company is the largest shipbuilding company on the planet. Last week, the company made a major announcement in that they are joining the South Korean government's Creative Economy Initiative by opening an innovation center in Ulsan, the same city that their headquarters are located. The Ulsan Creative Economy Innovation Center will have two different branch locations, one at the University of Ulsan and the other at the city's Startup Assistant Center. The article adds that the company has also teamed with two other major South Korean shipbuilders, Samsung Heavy Industries and Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering. Combined, the three companies will share 2,500 patents with the center's startups so that they can develop new projects and products which better suit the three patent holders. Ultimately, the goal of this initiative will be to bolster the local economy as well as advance the technologies behind the shipping industry. The three large shipbuilders, along with engineering students at the University of Ulsan and the various startups, will work together on research around new technologies such as 3D printing, aiming to localize the production of 15 major ship parts at the center by year's end, and as many as 165 different parts by 2018. The Hyundai Heavy estimates that such localization of manufacturing could save the Korean shipbuilding industry approximately $1.8 billion annually. The process means that there is little or no waste since there is no cutting of materials from bulk metals. Although it is my personal feeling that newer technologies will be making conventional shipping obsolete, the very fact that a company is moving ahead in incorporating futuristic technologies into its building process is at least a positive step in a new direction. Finally, in health news, in this week's FYI segment, Alice Coppers returns and she begins a series of reports investigating the dangers of glyphosate, or glyphosates, as they have also been called. This is a product that has been linked with the growing evidence of a plan for global population control, or global eugenics. As more people become aware, is it any wonder that more and more countries are finally beginning to take a stand against the control and enslavement of humanity and the destruction of our planet by targeting companies like Monsanto and other biotech companies that are major producers of this particular compound. With more information about this, here is Alice Coppers.
Tonight I'm going to begin a topic of glyphosate, and it may end up being 2 or 3 more sessions before I finish it. I think everybody knows that glyphosate is the main ingredient in Roundup, the weed killer made by Monsanto. Glyphosate is not connected to GMO, genetic modification. It is a chemical that is used to kill weeds, and the plants that are genetically modified adapt to it and are not killed. Everything else dies. Monsanto also invented Agent Orange and many other bioweapons. So there's a long history back into 1940s for Monsanto's development of these toxic herbicides. Glyphosate was first promoted to prevent weeds and increase yield. However, research shows that after 3 years, the yields drop dramatically. Glyphosate is sprayed on all wheat, sugar, soy, and cotton. It is used to cure it, so it is not listed as an additive or a pesticide. It is also not sprayed on any organic plants. Glyphosate is designed to alter the neurosystem and kill the plant. Today, Dr. Anthony Samsel, a farmer and scientist who talks extensively about glyphosate, and I have included in my references, looked at how glyphosate caused tumors in animals. He also found that there's over 1 billion pounds a year sprayed in America, which equals 200 pounds per person in America sprayed. It's found in urine in the Arctic. So animals, everything's ingested it. Being a chemist, he also investigated it and his illnesses and found that glyphosate is a neurochelator. In other words, it removes minerals from plants and people. A mineral chelator creates shortages in the body. With glyphosate, it creates shortages of sulfur, which is why we have so many infections, particularly urinary tract and sinus infections. Also, we have iron shortages, lack of energy, hemoglobin is poor, all kinds of problems from shortages of iron, shortages of calcium, shortages of manganese and zinc. And it may be blocking the uptake of all of these minerals also, but that's hard to prove since the shortages are so severe. It also assists in the manufacture and process of killing healthy bacteria in the soil, and in people and animals, killing healthy bacteria in the stomach and intestines. There is a patent on this owned by Monsanto. Species of Salmonella are immune because of overspraying. The difference between glyphosate and algae is that algae only removes toxic heavy metals from the kidneys and liver and organs. Glyphosate removes non-toxic metals that initiate chemical reactions in the brain and body. Also, research from Dr. Mercola shows that glyphosate causes severe shortages of amino acids, glutathione, tryptophan, which makes our melatonin so we can sleep, serotonin, which is muscle mass, relaxation, and also insulin growth factors involved with serotonin. 90% of serotonin is manufactured in the gut, so if we destroy the bacteria and the good flora and fauna, there's no serotonin in the blood. Also, Europe and Asia have outlawed GMO and Monsanto Roundup in their foods. Why hasn't America? When we begin to look at the neurosystem and how all the communication from the brain to every part of the body involves the neurosystem, we begin to see how glyphosate is destroying the neurosystem of just about every person on this planet. It begins with backaches or neck aches, pinched nerve. Maybe you're told that your spine is crooked or you have poor posture. And in reality, these discs and these bones in the spine are deteriorating from lack of micronutrients. So then the spine deteriorates. Let's take iron out of the blood and we have poor energy. B12, B10, and B9 all require iron in order to be processed in the body. And all are involved in the blood being able to carry oxygen. And we know that the more oxygen the blood can carry, the more athletic people are, the more energy, and the longer they can last. We also see that glyphosate is not just affecting people and animals. It's affecting aquatic life, butterflies, and very critical to our bee population here in America. It has also caused women to have painful penetration during sex, and men not to gain erections naturally. Because it was designed to affect the sex organs so that animals could not repopulate, it has the ability to alienate people. Because the sex becomes painful, it no longer becomes something desired. Also, it reduces population and increases more aggressive and violent tendencies among populations because of the alienation and because of the feelings of being sick all the time, especially young people. They don't interpret the inability to get an erection to what they're eating. They interpret it to, if you don't use it, you lose it. This leads to severe sexual addictions in America. This is why people are so addicted to pornography and so addicted to mechanical sex. It is to do with the idea that if one doesn't use it, one will lose it, and therefore one needs to do it often and more often, and that is false. What glyphosate does to our neurons, and I'm going to get into this extensively in the next one on autism, is there is on every nerve a myelin sheath around this nerve. This is a sheath made of the good fats that we're supposed to be eating. However, it is destroyed by glyphosate, and this myelin sheath protects our nerves. If you remember the old saying, hitting a raw nerve, that is exactly what the myelin sheath does. If it is not there, it is like lifting up that piece of skin and touching the underneath part of the sore, and ouch, right? Where the myelin sheath over it, the skin back over the sore, it is not going to hurt as severe. So when a message is received in people that don't have myelin sheath, everything is anxiety and nervous. The nerves you can even see in the microscope, they shake. And what some doctors believe, and I've listed them in my references, is that this myelin sheath is destroyed, and in some people it is never regained. We'll talk about how to regain that in diet, exercise, and other things in my next video.
FYI is researched and presented by Alice Coppers and may or may not reflect the opinion of CVN. As always, it is up to each individual interpreting any information offered to do greater research to determine whether or not the health-related information has any meaning for anyone in any particular moment of now. Alice's email address appears in the show summary for any wishing to ask questions. And in this week's final words, for those who are trying to look for this type of information, there are many sources out there now vying to be the one who brings the message of disclosure to the people of our planet. Some are doing it for purely egoic reasons, the glory factor, or perhaps the fortune factor. Others are doing it because they are driven by one or more aspects of the disclosure announcement, or they believe this to be the case. There are media and even now some credible organizations that are leaking information out. Those who have been following this story for a long time have begun to learn a bit more about discernment, an ability to filter through information and take only that which is meaningful for that individual in that moment. There are a number of quote-unquote bigger names than Cosmic Vision News, fulfilling their roles in helping to disclose the existence of our galactic families in whatever ways they feel is meaningful to do. As I have mentioned previously, the movie Contact, starring Jodie Foster, attempted to introduce the idea of spirituality, albeit in a religious 3D perspective, into the journey to be reunited with our galactic families. This is not to say the religious 3D perspective is wrong, because even this perspective, however incomplete I personally feel it is reaching particular groups of the human population who are ready to hear this message a certain way. I have personally wondered how different sources could not include some aspect of spiritual belief when considering the issue of disclosure. I then have to pull myself back and allow them their path. Some sources are jumping all over different kinds of information, attempting to share it with everyone, perhaps without taking time to see if it really resonates within the heart. I am still learning how to do this, and this has impacted my choice to avoid reporting on certain stories or sources because I am wanting to observe whether those sources will be proven accurate or not. Perhaps I am like some of these other disclosure sources in my desire to be one of the people introducing our galactic families to the people of Earth. I then have to evaluate within myself what my true purpose and intention is in possibly fulfilling this service for humanity, our planet, and our galactic families. In my desire to be one who shares information relating to our galactic families, I have also been humbled by another belief, and it is a belief that was one of the original pillars of the news and broadcasting profession back when it began. It is better to be accurate than to be first. I have also been humbled by my motivation for disclosure and also for this newscast. Others do their jobs for money, recognition, power, status, and perhaps a retirement pension. To me, personally, all of those things are redundant because in a post-disclosure world, almost all of those things will either not exist or at least be much less significant. My purpose for disclosure and for this newscast is to help co-create the disclosure of our galactic families, but also to co-create a day when CVN will no longer be necessary because this better world will have now been created. How different this world might be if everyone did their jobs with the same intention. Everyone is afraid to quit a job because they have bills, and they protest if there are changes that may threaten the existence of their job, even if the new technology ultimately helps the planet. When we can let go of our need to see the world from the current economic model, with the current types of jobs, and begin co-creating the new world with new technologies, new jobs, new companies that are more earth-friendly, with business models that are more life-honoring, will begin to appear, and we can begin to release our attachment to preserving the old model purely for self-preservation. So there is something distinctly spiritual, not only to life in its grandest sense, but also as it applies to the existence of life beyond Earth. A conversation with my friend Linda Dillon on this topic found that we share a similar perspective, and she chose to word it this way. It surprises me, said Linda, that so many people who are, quote-unquote, working on disclosure want to avoid the spiritual or woo-woo stuff, because our star family is totally based on the spiritual and heart-centered awareness, the love. That's the frequency they operate from, and that's the reason they're here. Not social, political, global, economic, or technology, but to participate in and be part of the rebirth of love on this planet. John Lennon, singer for the Beatles, said the following: "There are two basic motivating forces, fear and love. When we are afraid, we pull back from life. When we are in love, we open to all that life has to offer with passion, excitement, and acceptance. We need to learn to love ourselves first, in all our glory and our imperfections. If we cannot love ourselves, we cannot fully open to our ability to love others or our potential to create. Evolution and all hopes for a better world rest in the fearlessness and open-hearted vision of people who embrace life." Part of the challenge I am personally experiencing at this time is that I want to be able to share with everyone some exciting news about disclosure. This is what I would like to focus on, but I would rather wait and observe what happens with certain sources at this time to see whether or not they last the test of time and integrity. As I have said, I would rather be late and be more accurate instead of being first to share information and then having later to concede that it was not accurate. It is my personal feeling that this is similar to the boy who cried wolf one too many times, and the people stopped listening to the boy, even when the wolf finally did appear, and the boy could not get anyone to believe him. It is an exciting time for those who are able to see, and more importantly, to feel the changes that are going on right now. Those who can feel it and sense it are very blessed at this time, even if it is causing some discomfort while adapting to these energetic changes. Although exciting, the times are also challenging, and for those who have not yet chosen to see what is happening around the world on a higher level, these people may be experiencing fear and chaos in their lives, and very likely also within their bodies. You may notice that I am refraining from naming specific names. Some of you may wonder who the various sources are to whom I am referring. This is not important, because I would prefer not to get into the naming and shaming game that I am observing from some sources. There are many who are ready to share anything that specifically names a source as bad. I would gently offer this for consideration to those who are willing to share information that labels sources as bad or as disinfo. I would offer that it may be better not to engage in any energies at this time that are contributing to any outcome that you personally do not want to see happen at this time. If you are one who does wish to see chaos, fear, and confusion in the world, then of course you are free to choose to share whatever information you feel is relevant to justify the reality you are choosing to create. I am the first to admit how challenging this is, Although there are sources whom I am questioning with regards to their true intent and integrity, I do not fault any of them as human beings, for they are contributing in their way to the awakening process. I may not agree with their statements, their actions, or perhaps even their choices if I feel they are made from the ego. This does not make them wrong, however, as a human being. It is my personal feeling that at this time it is becoming more important that when we choose to call out a source on something, that we avoid naming the human as being bad or wrong, and focus instead only on the material or what was offered. Naming a human source as bad is not a judgment we have the right to make, for no one knows the sole contract of any other, or their purpose in serving at this time. We all can help to empower sources to become better when the battle moves away from a personal attack and focuses only on the specific choice or the specific action or the specific information that is relevant in that moment. This, by the way, is a key rule in building a strong personal relationship with your partner. When you fight, fight fairly. Focus on the issue at hand and how it made you feel in any moment instead of seeking to blame or judge another. When the attack becomes personal, most will respond with a defensive counterattack, for those people have not yet mastered the control over their responses. We may not be able to control what others say about us, but we can control how we choose to respond to them. And in our awareness, this helps model the co-creation of the new planet we are all claiming to want to experience. Create a wonderful week until our next Moment of Now. So that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is a part of the Enlight Universal group of programs. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary on the blog at cosmicvisionnews.com, on CVN's Facebook and Scene pages, CVN's YouTube channel, and also on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that when you are born into a world in which you do not fit, it's because you were born to help create a new one. Until our next Moment of Now, stay grounded in love. Hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts. Keep your eyes to the skies, because disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.